Hi, I'm Jessie.
And I'm Natasha.
And together, we host Not Creative, the podcast that flips the script on creativity, bringing together the ones with the ideas and the ones who make it all happen behind the scenes.
In each episode, we dive into the minds of creatives, problem solvers, and the people who prove you don't have to wear the creative label to shape brilliant ideas.
Let's get into it. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to Not Creative, the podcast that flips the script on creativity, looking at the people who shape ideas, whether they are making them or making them happen. Today we have a really fun guest with us. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
We do. So Nick is what we call in the industry a get. Nick is a TV producer and commissioning editor of drama for the BBC. He's worked on some iconic shows, including Doctor Who, Silent Witness, and one of my favorite period dramas, Sanditon. I love it. I'm obsessed. So Nick is here, and I gotta say, it's a little bit funny because when we put together this concept of not creative, we're obviously talking about people who are in front of the camera, behind the camera, in doing the artwork, not doing the artwork, making things happen. Would you say you're a creative or not a creative?
Well, firstly, I'm really excited to be a get. That's never happened to me before. I think we should just quit now because I can go home. That's not how the rest of the industry would see me. I would say I am a creative, but I think that most people, when they look at television, would similarly not quite understand what it is I do. So that's quite interesting. It's not the first creative job they would think of, quite rightly, when they are watching things on screen.
I mean, you get a credit, so maybe anyone who gets a credit is a creative?
I mean, I would say yes. But again, you see, what does the, best boy or whatever it says on a television, what do they really do? That's the bit. I think there's lots of very confusing credits. There's always an assistant to somebody who needs a coffee who now gets a credit, especially in America. Yes, I am a creative, but I think as you sort of hinted with a little tiny snapshot of what I've done slightly different creative jobs and been more or less involved, which maybe we can talk about depending on what we're doing. So how I'm creative now is possibly slightly different to how I was a few years ago.
I think this is actually a really good segue into just kind of like one of our opening questions, which is, what does it mean to be creative for you? Like, what does it mean? Like, what is creativity for you?
I think that's quite a difficult question, so I'm pleased you always start with it. I guess on a basic fundamental level, I think it's imagination, and without wanting to make that sound too grand and crazy, that can mean two things. I think in the job that I do, it's the imagination to literally make up stories, because drama is what I do and that's all it really is, it's making up stories. But actually as well, and increasingly in a lot of the jobs I've done, and that is the imagination to solve problems, because a lot of what goes on is problem solving, really, be that kind of quite technical or actually problems in those stories. So that's kind of where the creativity fits with what I do.
I think you're the first person to say the word imagination, which is great.
Well, it's all made up. This is just this secret spoiler that I'm going to tell everyone when you're going to ask me questions about what I do. I am literally doing a job where I'm making it up as I go along. So I am sort of the luckiest person in the world, because that is what I'm paid to do. And everyone says, well, it must be more complicated than that, but actually often it isn't really. We're just trying to find a way to make something up that you're all going to believe. So
aren't we all, Nick? Aren't we all just making it up as we go along? Jess and I are both from agency and from like marketing and the creative industry, more from a marketing and advertising perspective. So when we were thinking about the idea of the creative and the not creative, we were questioning why do we need to stay within the realms of marketing and advertising when creativity is actually much wider than that. So it's fascinating to hear a different perspective, and kind of like to have your experience of being a creative and working with what we would call the not creatives in a completely different industry, but that is so driven by creativity and looking at how creativity comes across from problem solving and from imagination. So
I think what's really interesting about this is that if this was just a TV podcast, when people say creatives, they would probably be talking about writers and probably about directors. And that doesn't mean that, as I say, there's so many creative jobs in TV and making drama in particular. But it's funny how within different spheres, the what's creative and not creative shifts quite a bit, which is kind of, it's just an interesting way of like looking at this whole setup, I guess.
Yeah, it's true.
I think that the putting the problem solving spin on it as well is a really interesting theme, because when I think of the translation of what creativity means in different industries, often I think of the creatives as the ones who cause the problems, and I, as a non-creative, have to solve the problem. But I like that the creativity...
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Like, I'm like, thank you for giving me another problem that didn't exist yesterday. Hurrah. But I do think that that's a really good bridge. It's like, how do I solve this problem? If I can solve this problem, then I'm now actively contributing to the solution, which is the creative output, I have a follow-up question for you, which is, can you explain, and do your parents and grandparents understand what you do? Like, when you talk about your job, are they like, oh, I get what you do?
So as I change jobs, and as some people would say, move up the industry, they sort of understand it less. Actually, I think there was a sweet spot. So I guess I started as a script editor. What's a script editor? Nobody knows, but at least you can sort of work it out from the job title. A script editor is someone who works on a really basic level. I'm about to do lots of script editors down. A script editor is someone who works with a writer to help them to produce a script. They write up notes, they give notes, not on their own, but they're entitled to their own notes. They kind of collate the notes for everyone else, and they work with the production, if it gets made, to then make sure that all the notes that everyone's struggling with are kind of communicated to the writer. So I started there. People kind of got that. Then I became a producer. People went, oh, that's exciting because it means your name goes on the front, and that feels like it might be quite important. Producer is just a fussy way of saying the kind of person in charge of bringing the whole production together and being across everything that's creative, I guess, on the set. Now I'm a commissioning editor, which sounds really boring and doesn't sound creative in any way. But that's just the person at the BBC, in my case, who is helping to decide what dramas we're going to make. Because obviously a lot of different people are pitching a lot of dramas all the time, and we can't make them all. So I'm part of a team that's helping to decide what we're going to make. And then when we've decided what dramas we're going to make, I look after some of those shows. So I just make sure, from the channel's point of view, from the organisation's point of view, that I guess they're okay, they're delivering what we want them to. And also being a kind of sounding board, I guess. So it's like a sort of slightly stepped back role, the executive producer role, if anyone's ever heard of that, which is where you're slightly removed from the process. And so the notes you're giving are probably closer to the audience's. So the simplest way of understanding that is really, I'm the person that says, thanks for doing that, but I don't really understand it. Could you do it again, please? So it's kind of that, really. I think that's a really good idea. Could you write it down? There's a lot of that going on in my job at the moment. Does any of that make any sense?
It does. No, it does. I think it's one of the hallmarks of a more behind the scenes role, that like your grandparents just can't understand what you do. It's like, I contributed to this thing that you're watching. I make commercials and videos and stuff for my clients, and I show them to my family, and they're like, great, so what was your role in this? And I'm like, yeah, I did stuff. I worked really hard. I lost weekends and nights to this. Can you not tell?
No.
Can you not get my vibe?
I mean, a lot of people, when I was a script editor, would say, so you're a writer. And that happened so many times that I sort of stopped correcting them if I was meeting them just once at a party, because I'd sort of go, yeah, like, which is terrible, because I can't do that. Like, it was simpler than having to then explain the whole thing. With commissioning, it's really interesting because people will nod very sagely because it sounds really important. But actually, I think, my parents do understand what I do because I've tried to explain it to them. But I think they found it a bit easier to understand when I was like, I'm making this program. And now I make lots of programs all at once on different levels, some of which need lots of help, some of which we need no help, some of which need help in ways that are too boring and corporate to even discuss. I guess that is a bit confusing when you've done something very specific and then you move across. But you're on telly. That's all you've got to sort of communicate, really, and people go, oh wow, that sounds really interesting.
I think it's your version of I work with computers. It's like I'm on the telly.
And yeah, you just have to sort of like, you have to ride it, you have to sort of guess when you're talking to people and engaging with them. You have to work out how interested they are. And normally what happens is, how interested they are is they will immediately ask you, what have you done? Or what do you work on? And if the programs you list they've never heard of or they don't like, they don't engage at all. That's why, like at the beginning you mentioned Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a really useful, awkward social icebreaker because everybody knows what it is, even if they hate it. And some people really do hate it. They understand. You can mention Doctor Who and people will go, oh, and you'll sort of find your way in somehow.
I'm at risk of going a bit on a tangent here, but I'm just really dying to know. How much hate do you get, Nick?
On this podcast, not enough. I mean, but we're only a few minutes into it, so who knows? I don't know, how much hate do I get? Well, I'm not really on social media, which is the way people tend to access people in TV. Do I get hate in my job? Oh, almost certainly. Every production I work with, when I turn off the camera or when I leave the room, they start to complain bitterly about the BBC, the commissioner who didn't understand their vision. Why on earth is he giving that note? What do you mean? Like you try, and actually, in a funny way, you accept that because that's part of how productions and how creatives get things made. They need an enemy. They need someone to sort of rally against and go, we'll show him if he says that doesn't work. We'll make that better. But in a way, I've sort of won there because I used to do that when I was on the other side. Like I've crossed the floor. I'm a collaborator. I'm a traitor. I've gone to the side of the broadcaster. So people are primed to think, oh my God, the broadcaster must be a moron and not understand what we're doing. So it's your job to be as clear and careful and polite as you can. Occasionally people are really cross to my face and then I have to sort of absorb that and go, okay, but this is why we think this, or this is why I'm asking you to do this. And it's back to creativity. It's not my job to make people write or make a show the way I would make it. It's my job to help them to realise what they want to do and it still be really clear and accessible and what we want from, as a broadcaster, from the channel. Lots of people will do it in lots of different ways. I think you're doing it wrong if you're sort of always butting heads and challenging them, because it probably means you're trying to impose too much of your will on it. Yeah, that's why the notes, I think, tend to be things like, just so you know, I'm not following this. Can we talk about what it is you're trying to do so we can make it clear? Like, it's that, I guess.
Yeah, the parallel is just so clear between what we do, isn't it, Jess? It's like just hearing you talk about it. It might be a completely different industry, but it's funny how creativity works in the same way, no matter how you look at it. We really need to work together to get to the better result, and you're going to have people bringing different opinions, and you're going to have clients that will look at a work and be like, well, I don't understand it. And the creatives in this case, which for us tends to be, like writers, designers, art directors, they will have a vision, and it's about how do you work with them.
Well, the best stuff is made via collaboration. It's quite hard. I think people have a vision outside, and sometimes the media plays this up, that there's a big showrunner who's just banging their fist and shouting things out, and that's what people do. Maybe that does happen in places, but that is not how the best shows are made. And the best people to work with do listen to notes. They don't necessarily do the same solution that you would have done, but they do hear what you're trying to say or express because they understand that that's an important part of the process. And I think that that's what we have to sort of hold on to. These different levels are not there. They're not hurdles to jump. They're actually there to help you realize the best version of what we're doing, which is easy for me to say because I'm the commissioner. But when you're on the other side, boy, are you cross that someone else has got to read it and say something. So who knows? But
Yeah. And just leaning on this a little bit, there is a question that we like to ask on the podcast. When you're thinking about like creativity or being creative, would you say there is a gift, a curse, a calling, none of the above?
oh gosh, it's probably all of those, isn't it? I don't know. When people read out my biography, it looks very carefully planned. Like it was all some grand, like, gosh, he's really got himself together. Instead, like most people do, stumbled from one thing to another, and it's a very precarious employment, and you've had to move around the country and whatever. It's probably a gift and a curse. I think if I was doing other jobs, I'd be bored. For TV, I'm in a relatively stable job at the moment. But all the freelance jobs that I did before are not necessarily in terms of working hours and in terms of where you have to be and all that. That's not necessarily the best job in the land. Not even on pay. It's not very well paid. So many of those jobs are poorly paid. But I really, really enjoyed doing them. So apart from the obvious things that you do end up hating bits of your job, but I enjoyed them and I wanted to do them, and I think that that's probably the curse of it. Do you know what I mean? Is that you're trying to reach for. I know lots of people who are in very stable jobs who are effectively very bored and desperate to get out but can't. I'm very lucky in that if I've ever got bored, I go and do another show. So I sort of think that it's quite fun, that it's quite nice, and that's all the time I'm enjoying it. I sort of want to hold on to it for a bit longer because I can't add up. I mean, it's terrible. So don't make me go and do something real. Don't make me look at a spreadsheet or sit in an office all the time or something bonkers.
I've had the privilege of stumbling around with you on some of those stumbling journeys, and it's been quite a fun, exotic break to come visit wherever Nick's filming something. I've gotten a couple of little mini breaks out of it.
By the way, these exotic locations are Cardiff and Glasgow. Do you know what
These
I
are
mean?
the exotic
I do a lot
locations.
of work at the moment in Belfast. If only I was making something like Death in Paradise, we'd be away. We'd be in the Bahamas.
Do you find that you encounter a lot of difficult people to work with because it's such a creative industry?
There are a lot of people who are very passionate about what they do.
Diplomatic
I
answer.
Think, well,
I'm trying for the
it
drama.
starts diplomatic, but it gets less diplomatic.
Right to the ground.
I think they're very passionate about what they do, and so inevitably there is quite a lot of conflict. You have your creative argument, and then it's done, or it turns into something more personal and more vicious, and it carries on and it carries over. And do you know what I mean? Like there are different ways of handling that pressure, and of course, it's a job. It's personality driven. There are people you just don't like, or you don't get on with, or don't communicate very well. That's the other thing, that you're constantly thinking, am I communicating clearly what it is we want to do here? Am I making decisions like? As a producer, then on the last producer job I did, I had someone with me who was training to be a producer, and they asked lots of questions, and I sort of said out of nowhere, look, it doesn't sometimes matter what decision you make, you've just got to make one. Because if you don't, it doesn't actually matter whether the wall is green or blue. But if you don't make that decision, everyone will start running around like headless chickens, not sure what they're supposed to be doing, and they'll all start falling out with each other. There are some people who have been in this industry longer than I've been born, and who feel they know everything. And the other thing about this industry right now, which I'm sure is the same in yours, but it's really true of ours, is it's changing really fast. Like with stuff that I was doing 10 years ago, we don't do anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't work. Like the way people are engaging with television and engaging with content is completely turned on its head. It's quite hard to have been doing it for a long time and realise what you're doing is now outdated and needs to change. That leads to a lot of conflict as well, I think. And then there's actors who are all, crazy. So, it's they'll love that description. But yeah, they mostly are, because they're living in a different world to us.
The good news is no one's going to hear this podcast, so no one will hear any of this.
Great. Let's list all the people I actually hate.
We can actually just burn it to
do
the
it
ground
now, shall we?
Yeah. I've got my pen. I mean, speaking of things we hate, and please don't let any television production companies come for me for this reference. have always loved the concept of Room 101. So if you're thinking about your job, getting things done, creative, production, anything in your universe, what would you banish to Room 101?
Oh my God, where am I going to even start? How long have we got? How is this podcast going to last 12 hours? No, I don't know. So I think some of it's quite mood based. At the moment, in the industry you're doing, you'll be absolutely horrified. I'm going to banish decks. You know, when people create decks, particularly in marketing and publicity, and like where people like produce 55 slides, of which the first 50 tell me what we discussed last week to bring me back up to speed with the meeting I haven't forgotten, so that they can then show me another concept. But it turned out to be the poster we looked at last week, but now in blue. But it's taken an hour because we have to talk through. And also that thing that people do, the other thing about these decks, which clearly I'm very animated about, is that also there's text on it. And then they read it to me as if I can't read or as if I can't see the deck. But it's a PowerPoint, so if I can see it, why do we need to read it? It takes a long time to go through some quite basic information. I haven't had to deal with much of this until the job I'm doing now. Now I feel I get called to a Zoom or a meeting to look at decks all the time. And they're not very useful. I don't really understand. Everyone says, oh, it's visual, but it's not visual because you read it to me. So I it's all just very strange. And I think I'm just going to go back to the old, just show me the next thing that you want to show me, or send me an email, or do whatever it is. Is that a weird answer? I don't know.
No. I have to say, I'm crying here so much. I'm glad.
You make a lot of decks. I make a lot of decks.
I'm sure decks were a good idea. They're a great way to show. They're a great way to show the work. But the decks I see are always preamble to the work. They're always like setting up. There's a lot of information before eventually I go, oh right, that's the poster. Yeah, I like it. Or yeah, I hate it. Like, it's like, I don't know. I just seem to be surrounded by those at the moment, but maybe they'll all go away. I don't know. I'm probably dissing. Good thing no one's going to hear this. So I'm probably dissing the entire marketing team of the BBC, aren't I? Which I don't mean to.
Yeah, I feel like marketers are very attached to decks. I know, like
they love it. They absolutely love them. I sort of sit there, but I don't know what to say or do or where to look. Do I nod? Do I say yes? Do I pretend that I can't read the words on the page? I don't know. I'm sort of there going, Like, and also occasionally, my other highlight of these decks is that things I've said appear and they read them back to me. That's my favourite bit, where I sort of go, yeah, I know. That's why I said it. Like, I'm finding that really interesting. And it's like a new thing that I have to sort of navigate. But, I mean, I don't know if it's hatred. It's just more of a sort of observation of, oh, right, we're going to do this again. Like, you know.
You're making me rethink, like, my
most people probably love them, because if you don't remember the meeting or you've gone to sleep or something, it's quite useful to have a recap. Like, in drama, we love a recap, because who knows whether you saw episode 2 or not. So it's kind of that. But, so I'm thinking a lot about those. And I don't know what else I would banish, really. I mean, before I did this job, probably commissioners. So, you know, that shows how quickly things can turn. Once someone else wants to pay you, look how quickly your allegiances move. Like, you know.
I cannot count how many times we were in a situation where a client looks at something that we've done based on something they've asked, and they look and they're like, but I didn't ask for this.
Yeah,
I
can believe
that.
that.
Instead. And we were like, wait, what?
I think that's yes, I'm guessing it happens because other people deny all knowledge of ever having said or done anything. And so they want to remind you how they got there and why they've done it. But people work so hard on, sometimes they work so hard on, pictures of mad things. Also, people pitch things to me. People pitch new ideas to me, and they come in decks. And they're kind of mad because it's not a real thing, but they've put pictures of actors that they'd quite like to play the parts sometimes on these decks, and you're like, Tom Cruise ain't doing this. So when you wrote this man is 45, I don't need a visual representation of a 45-year-old man. I know what that looks like, but they love it. They're obsessed with them. So I flick through a lot of pictures and go, what's the story? Like, it's so, yeah, I probably shouldn't admit that either, but yeah, everyone is obsessed with, shall we send you a deck of people who could be in it? I'm like, well, do you know them? Are they willing to do it? Like, yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I'm probably far too cynical, but I do enjoy, like, people go to a real effort. So, but I just go, oh, let's just focus on this bit.
I know we are laughing, and it's hilarious to me at least. Like, but it's actually such an important conversation, which is what do you want to get out of this, and who is your audience, who are you talking to? So like, these people that are building these decks and are adding all those pictures, are they doing it for their own sake or for your sake? If they want to sell the idea to you, they should present it in the way that will resonate the most with you.
Yeah, I think that's what a part of my job is, to build the right relationships so that people know the best way to present it or give it to me or what I might be looking for or whatever it is.
I will happily never do another deck. Truly.
What are you going to do all day, Jess, if you don't have decks?
Oh my God, I would love to not do any. I'm like working on a deck for a client tomorrow, and I'm like, maybe we'll just sing it. I don't know. But I was going to say, in the spirit of collaboration and communication, what is your favorite thing that non-creatives do?
Oh, I think that in my job, you need the perspective. There are some jobs that everyone would easily identify as creatives, be it writer or director, or maybe they're a production designer and they create incredible sets and incredible dressing for all sorts of locations. And I think it's important to have people there with the perspective to say, but actually, you know what, if you spend half the money and just do that, I'll believe it just as much, or it will look just as beautiful. Or, as we said, I don't really understand what it is you're trying to say here. It's understanding in my job that you can tell the story in lots of different ways. Yes, you've got to preserve the story that's trying to be told, but there's lots of different ways of achieving that. But I think that's really valuable. I work on shows where people sit in a room and they're doing their jobs by talking about it all day, every single day. But that makes it really hard to see the wood for the trees sometimes and sort of understand what's working and what's not working and why can't we fix this. And having other people, not just me, it's loads of people who can kind of slightly one step removed and go, are you sure about this, or have you thought about doing it this way? I think that's really valuable.
I agree. I think a good outside perspective, it can just add so much value. It can point out the obvious thing that you didn't know was obvious.
Yeah.
There's so many times that I'll just be, and I am a not creative, but I'll have my head in the project and I won't even notice that we spelled the client's name wrong, because I'm like so focused. I mean, that doesn't happen frequently.
No, but it does happen. That's the thing. And so, yeah.
Even dumb things, but then also, more, subliminal, nuanced things can just be improved from someone saying, I don't know if I get that reference, or I just don't know if I get that, thing that you're trying to pull off. It's a bit too big a leap. No, I love that.
Yeah,
love that.
sometimes we are so in it, aren't we? Like, we're so into something. So a concept might seem genius for us, but it's because we have all the context, and a new person who looks at it is like, wait, what are you trying to do here? Like, I have no idea, what does it mean? And it just makes you be like, oh, okay, so I guess that didn't work.
I think that's where being a commissioner is, for me, that's where you're useful. And all I really want to do is be useful. There's no point in turning up and just saying something because someone says you've got to say something now. That's where that perspective is what you're doing that's useful to them. And like I said, I don't think it's very useful to go, well, I would have done it like this. Well, that's not helpful if it's not broken. But I've seen some people do that and it's really it's irritated me, or it's made me go, well, okay, is that better or just different? I forget sometimes that it's quite a powerful position. People are worried, like when you turn up for the first time, that you might be about to cancel their show. We never are. But perspective is the most useful thing that we have.
And there is so much subjectivity in creativity also, isn't there? Like, there is so much that is opinion-based, like when we are talking about creativity in the broader sense, like being in arts or in television or in advertising, there's a lot of subjectivity in play. So I feel like being able to balance the subjectivity with the experience and what we bring to the table from everything that we have seen and lived and like contributed to, it's is also a big thing.
Definitely. Definitely. Final question. Do you have
I've
a
survived
favorite?
so far. I've survived.
You
Yeah.
really have. You really have. Do you have a favorite non-creative? It can be a
Oh,
person or a type of person.
oh wow. Like, I mean, I've probably got some literal favorites, but I'm not necessarily going to name those people because they'd be very embarrassed. And also, to be honest, they'd probably be quite horrified. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've partly answered it. I like the collaborators. I like the people that have got the intellectual curiosity to go, oh, why are you asking that question? Or what does that mean? They want to engage with the process. I find, for want of a better word, the dictators I find quite difficult. Like, I do have to sometimes work with those people, but I don't relish doing it because what you're then doing is trying to sort of manage someone without them realizing they're being managed, which is much harder. And so the favorite non-creatives and creatives, both sides, are the ones that are willing to engage with each other and learn from each other, I think. Which sounds a bit happy clappy, doesn't it? And we're all going to stand in a circle and sing. But I think that is the best way to get something that everybody is going to understand and enjoy and like. And usually, in television, those are the shows that do well. People say they have no idea whether anything's going to be a hit. They don't. But you can sort of guarantee that if it was a total nightmare and everyone hated each other and shouted at each other, it probably won't be that. So I think you just have to hold on to that for a bit. So I don't know if that's an answer, but it's the answer I'd like.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. I think it's a really interesting reflection as well that the things where you are all still pals at the end generally ends up being better things than the things where you all fell out because the reasons you fall out makes the work worse.
Some people
usually.
like the fight. I mean, they see that as the process. I honestly believe that. But that's not very me because secretly I don't really like confrontation. I don't really like shouting, no, it's got to be done this way by me or by anyone. And so I think, yeah, maybe it's personality driven, but I always think that, yeah, as you say, if at the end you can all look at each other and admire what you've done and enjoy it with each other, that's the sign of it. And then in TV, who cares if anyone watches it or not? That's the next bit. That's the horror to come. That you have to show it to somebody else. You want to come to the end, and because it's hard. As I always say, you have to work really, really hard in TV to make something really mediocre. So I just think you might as well be enjoying it.
Perfect. Gosh, what a fun episode. We've covered all sorts of things.
Is it? Good.
We said at the beginning, Jess and I were like, we're not going to kid ourselves that we are here to teach anyone anything.
No one should learn anything.
No one should
No,
learn anything.
no one learned
It's
anything
about
this
fun.
episode, I'm afraid.
No. But I do think it's really interesting how people on both sides of the creative, not creative debate, nobody's kind of come in the name of defending these are rigid roles that are defined in this way and ne'er in the middle should they meet. You know what I mean? Like nobody's ever kind of said that. So
But you know something, and I know we are recording, but we're going to cut this after, but something that has been funny for me is how everyone has been very politically correct in saying that everyone is creative, and
it's not true. No one thinks that.
the
I don't meet
day-to-day-
people who are in the creative teams who think everyone's creative.
exactly, that's my point. Like in the day-to-day, that's so not true, but I feel like when they come to something like this, they're like, well, everyone is creative. I don't know why you're saying not creative, because there is no such thing. You know, like,
That's really interesting. Yes, probably almost certainly true. But I think the non-creative people, the people that people genuinely think are not creative, they sort of think they're not part of these kinds of conversations. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think they get slightly deleted from your head when you start to think about it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Well, I think we should say goodbye. Thanks for listening, everyone. What a great fun.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Not Creative.
If you like this episode, follow us for more and spread the word.
You can find us on all the streaming platforms, Instagram, and YouTube at Not Creative Podcast.
Catch you next time.
I mean, that was pretty freaking good, man.